All right, here we go. Our first lesson, how this is going to work is I'm going to do a quick review and kind of notes and practice opportunity for you with this video. You will not be actually writing anything down. It's all just following along and thinking as I fill it in and talk. After that, you'll get a chance to practice through some activities that I have on Google for you that will be for grades. So let's jump right in. This is our beginning of our unit on statistics. So when we're looking at populations and samples, you'll see that my little graphic down here where we have population, we're talking about the full group, and then a sample is only the part of the population that you're actually going to question. So if we're looking at an example of seventh graders and what their favorite sport are, the seventh graders would be the population, and we're only going to sample a small part of that. So if I say I'm going to sample every other seventh grader that comes to the top of the stairs in building 3, the sample would be just the kids that I'm asking, and I'm going to be making an inference or a basic understanding based on the whole population after sampling that group. So if we're looking at the difference between samples and populations, we'll see that, sorry, I'm still getting used to this, that a sample is just simply a subset or a small part of an entire group. And it's going to refer to a portion of the group that has specific characteristics that we're looking for. In the example I just gave, we're looking for specifically every other seventh grader that comes to the top of the building 3 stairs, I would be asking. So when we collect data from a sample, that's going to be called our sample statistic. Sorry. So a great example is vowels in an alphabet. When we pull out just the vowels, those are going to be a subset of the entire alphabet. So that should make kind of sense to you. Then when we're talking about a population, when we're collecting data from a population, it's referring to the entire group. So if I'm going to collect data from everyone in my first period class, I would be collecting from the whole population because there's only 25 of you, and that's something that's doable that I can do. If I collect that data from the entire population, it's going to be called a population statistic. So the alphabet is the equivalent to the population, and the consonants are just a subset of the population, so that's going to be a sample of the population. Again, if we have let's talk about the whole school, and I only want to know something about seventh graders, population would be the whole school, seventh graders would be the sample of the population. So when we're looking at practicing here, if we are given the following statements, and the statements are populations, and we can come up with a possible sample. So people living in a specific neighborhood, I would say a sample that I could take are the children in the neighborhood, the children and what they like to do in their free time or while they're social distancing during coronavirus. But your sample could be elderly people in a neighborhood. Someone else's sample could be the parents that have children in the neighborhood. So a sample doesn't have to always be the same. You have specific reasons why you're looking at a sample. So go ahead and press pause, and please try to, in your brain, to come up with a sample for the 2 populations that are given for number 1 and 2. Okay, so now that you've come up with those things, if the sample, the population would be families with children, I would say maybe I want to know something about how many families just have 1 child. So we have families with 1 child. We could say families with multiple children. We could say families with 5 or more. And whatever you're wanting to ask them or find out is something separate from the actual determining what the population and sample are. But the population is the whole group, which would be families with children. And then the sample would be families with one child or families with 5 or more children. If we're looking at a population of all the seniors at East High School, we could say a sample or a sampling of those seniors would be seniors that are 18 or older. Or we could say seniors that drive. We could say seniors that don't have driver's license. But either way, seniors at the high school are the large population, and then the seniors, the smaller subset would be specific seniors at the high school that have a requirement that we're looking for. So now we're going to look at, when we're given samples, what could that sample be a smaller subset of? What type of population? So the example here would be children who play football for the YMCA. The larger population could be just in general children that play sports at YMCA. So we could have a whole bunch of children that play basketball, football, soccer, whatever YMCA offers. That would be our whole population. And then the sample that's given to you is only the group that's playing football at the YMCA. So please look at number 5 and 6. You're going to pause it and you're going to think for yourself, when given these two samples, what could those be smaller parts of? What populations could those be? So push pause and then we'll fill those in together. Okay, so for number 5, students who were on the B honor roll for the first 9 weeks, that would be a smaller subset of, say, all students at the school. It could also be that you could be looking at the population of students that made honor roll, and our given sample could just be a subset of the honor roll kids, because we would have kids on B honor roll, kids on A honor roll, and things like that. But if we say all the kids in the school would be the giant population, and then the sample given would be the students that made honor roll. Number 6, households that have cable in Riverside apartment complex. That would be a subset of all households at the apartment complex. So if we're looking at an apartment complex that has all the people that live there, we would want to be taking a sample of, or the sample would be part of that, by looking at who has cable. All right, last part, we have statistical questions. So a statistical question is going to be one that's answered with data. So a statistical question is one that's answered with data. And that data is going to always vary because depending on who you ask, the data could change. So with that said, when you're given a statistical question, how would you collect the data? Is it going to represent a population or a sample? And how do I know that, or why am I saying that? So if we're looking at the first one, what do 7th grade students want to do for the fall festival? Well, how could I collect that data? There's several different ways, but if we're looking at our school and our specifically the best way to collect that data to be unbiased, we could say I could survey the students at B lunch, because that's primarily 7th grade. I could also survey the 7th graders in my classes, and that would be a part of the larger population of the 7th grade students. So is the data going to be population or a sample statistic? So if I'm looking at surveying the students at B lunch, then it's going to be a sample statistic, because it's not going to be every single 7th grader. The whole population would be 7th graders. The sample is going to be just the students at B lunch. And how do I know? I know because not every student is going to be asked. All right, so the second one, what's the average grade on a semester exam in Miss Johnson's class? How would I collect that data? Well, I would just use the scores from the tests. I could also ask every student of their score, but just basically we're using how do I collect the data? I'm going to collect the data by taking the scores from everybody's tests to find the average. Is this going to be a population or a sample statistic? So if I'm talking about a grade on a semester exam in Miss Johnson's class, it is definitely feasible to find the average of test scores by using the entire population, everybody in Miss Johnson's class. So this is going to be a population statistic. And how do I know? All pieces of data are going to be used. All the students' grades will be part of the average. So the entire population is going to be used for this. Finally, I want you to pause this and you're going to try it for yourself. Just see if you can look at the given question. How would you collect that data? Think about, would that be a population or a sample statistic, and how do you know? So push pause and then we'll be back. Okay, so who do Americans want as their president? How do we know? How do we collect that when we are looking at who Americans want as their presidents? Well, we go to the polls to find out what Americans want, right? Is that going to be data of a population or a sample statistic? Unfortunately, every one of our Americans cannot vote, and everyone doesn't always come out to vote. So that's going to be a sample statistic because it's the Americans that actually come out and vote, they're just a subset of the entire population of Americans. And how do I know that? Because everyone doesn't vote. And then how many students in your school ride the bus home? Well, it's not feasible for us to ask every single student in the school if they ride the bus home or not to find out how many. So I would say we could just ask students in your classes. So if we're just asking students in our classes, is that going to be the entire population that we're questioning, or just a subset of that, which would be a sample? So of course, that would just be a sample of the entire school. And how do I know that? Because it's just part of the population. Okay, so with that said, you are going to now proceed from this video, and you're going to go to the Google Slides practice. And when you do that, you are going to then submit that assignment to me for a grade. And before the end of the week, you'll be doing the little exit ticket to practice to see what you've learned from this. So hopefully this went well. I'm new to this just like you, so I may be changing things as we go. And if any of this is confusing, you'll want to visit or come on during the designated web conferencing office hours for me, and you can find those on our eCampus page. So thank you so much.